Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. A winning start to the Thomas Frank era. It's a friendly. It was against lower league opposition, but you got to beat what's in front of you. And there were positives, there were negatives. There was a fair bit of rustiness, but all in all, plenty for us to dive into and analyse. Yes, this is one of these where I'm doing the video very late at night in order for it to be available in the morning to people. So I apologise if I stumble and stutter and struggle my way through it because it is very late and I'm not even going to tell you what the time is that I'm doing this because obviously I always want to get all my work out of the way first and then I launch into these. And if my voice starts to go, it was because I was doing a lot of shouting yesterday. We might have had our belated annual football match between the Spurs reporters and the club staff, which we might have won, and I might have scored a decent goal, but I'm not going to go into this. This is not about that. This is about Tottenham Hotspur and the first game of the Thomas Frank era, and actually some other bits and pieces, including his first press conference. There's loads of little things we can take, I think, from the last 24 to 48 hours or so, and we're going to kind of try and dive through them as quickly as possible. There's a lot to dive into, there really is, so I'm going to try. This match was kind of fascinating in certain aspects of not only seeing where the players are fitness-wise, because friendlies, there's so much you can take from different parts of things. Trying to get an idea of fitness, trying to get an idea of the system, trying to get an idea of where they are in understanding the philosophy of yet another new head coach, because let's be honest, they get through them at Tottenham. And actually, in his first press conference on what's yesterday for me, well, it's not technically now, on Friday, he was asked about taking on a job at a club that has sacked 5 managers in the time that he'd been at Brentford. And Thomas Frank jokingly said, only 5? And then he kind of said, I'm a man that likes risk. And you certainly have to be a man that wants a bit of risk in your life if you're going to join Tottenham Hotspur. And this is probably the riskiest move of his career since he decided to quit teaching in Denmark and go full-time into football coaching. I guess that was a calculated gamble that paid off, and I think I'm sure he'll be hoping that this is another one of those calculated gambles that will pay off for him. His first session, just very quickly on that, on the press conference itself with the media on Friday, had a bit of everything. It had a bit of humour, it had a bit of insight, some quite guarded answers, but also some quite open ones as well. And also, I'd say the odd nervous kind of verbal stumble over some words. It had a bit of everything. It was a good press conference, absolutely. It was quite a long press conference. I think it was about 45 minutes or so. He was good. I was trying to think of what my 3 questions were. I can't remember now. It feels like a lifetime ago. But I asked him kind of various questions, and he was good with them. Kind of gave me mostly what I wanted. But yeah, it was an insight into him, I think. And look, when I say about the odd, nervous little verbal stumble, that's entirely understandable. He's gone from having Brentford press conferences, where, from what I understand, the average each week was 6 reporters, and I think 2 student journalists would be in there sometimes as well. And he's gone from that to an absolutely packed room of journalists, all kind of us pesky reporters throwing questions at him. I think we all had 3 a pop each as well. That was probably why it was a long press conference. But also everyone just scrutinising his every word. At Brentford, probably didn't get too much of that. Whereas if you're the boss of Tottenham Hotspur, everyone's going to overanalyze what you say and do. And look, he's a really affable character. He's very warm, he's engaging, comes across really well. Even, I think he's going to throw out questions to us. He kind of made a point of that. I think he asked us something about Tottenham and the odds of them winning the Premier League this season. He was asking us, and we didn't kind of have that to hand. And he was like, be wary. I'm going to throw questions out to you. These are going to be interactive. Which was quite fun. And look, he used to be a teacher, and that's kind of an element. He is used to throwing out questions to people sat at desks in front of him, I guess, and there we were, kind of bringing it all back to him again. And look, from what I understand, he'd gathered many of the club staff at Hotspur Way in that very same press conference room about, I think, a couple of weeks ago. And he spoke to them about building a culture, remaining together as a unit through ever what happens. Because, you know, as he said in this press conference, as he said to them as well, we are going to lose matches. You know, it is very rare for a football team not to for a team not to lose a game. And he said it's about how you stick together in those moments as well. And then I think he cited Arsenal as being maybe one of the examples that didn't. And then said, we were not meant to mention them here, or rookie mistake. But then went on to say, look, even their unbeaten season, they lost in the cups and stuff like that. So every team is going to lose games in the season. It's about how they stick together. And he was kind of spoke to the staff about wanting to set the standards for the players to follow on the pitch. If everyone off the pitch is setting a standards, then the players have to uphold themselves to that as well. And that was what he spoke to the staff about. And I think this is the very collaborative way about Thomas Frank and the way he works, which is something that we're kind of going to see, I think, in the months ahead. He seeks opinions from others. I've done a lot of kind of digging into him since he joined, and he seeks opinions from others around him on what is working well, what can be improved. And that's not only in the players, but in himself and the way he operates and also his staff. He's always willing to take on feedback and grow as a manager, as a head coach, whatever you want to call it nowadays. And the best analogy I can think of this, and bear with me on this, you know when people kind of put rubber bands together, they tie them together, and you get these people that sometimes end up tying so many together, they end up having this massive ball of rubber bands. I'm trying to think what they're called in America. For American viewers, they've got a different name, and I cannot remember the life of me what they're called. We call them rubber bands in the UK anyway. Twang, you know what I mean. So some people make these massive balls out of them. For me, Thomas Frank is essentially that ball of rubber bands. He adds more and more layers to kind of what he does. He learns and he improves constantly every year, growing his experience. So if we're going to keep with this analogy, he can bounce higher in his career. And it's there in his football as well. I mean, if you look at the likes of, just for a Spurs example, Postecoglou, Conte, Mourinho, Pochettino, they had very clear systems and setups on the pitch, barring the odd dramatic tactical departure for a certain kind of big game or something. You could kind of predict how those four Spurs head coaches, managers, whatever you want to call them, would line up their Tottenham team on any given, match. Frank will be more of a challenge for us in that respect. His teams are kind of shapeshifters. Think of some sci-fi thing where they suddenly blend into becoming an alien becomes another human. That is essentially what his teams are like. They kind of mould to the need of the moment, the opposition in front of them. He requires his players to be very tactically flexible and versatile as well. And I think he's quite fortunate in that respect that he's inherited a Spurs squad that actually has a lot of those kind of players in there. Kind of Swiss Army knife players, or Swiss Archie knife, as someone pointed out to me before. A lot of players like that can play, and even like Kudus coming in and can play in various roles. I think this is what we're going to see with him. There's going to be a lot of flexibility, and he's having to get that across in these early training sessions. And from what I understand, Spurs players are enjoying the training sessions so far. Everything's always fresh and new to begin with, of course. We know down the line with Tottenham managers, and first thing you'll hear about if things aren't going well are how boring the training sessions have become. You've heard me say that for many years, how quickly that leaks out, whether it's true or not, or whether it's just something to beat the manager with. But look, like I said, from what I understand now, they're enjoying the sessions, even if by Thomas Frank's own admission, they are training sessions that mix the modern with the old school. From what I understand, a large number of his sessions right now have been concentrating heavily on defending for the attacking players as well. Many of the sessions as well, especially now in pre-season, have been ending with running for the players as well. I'm not talking about the 1 kilometre runs that we see them do. There's not too many of those, but they are certainly doing running at the end of sessions as well, because he wants to get them to this kind of the fitness levels that his ideas require. From what I understand, there's also a strong focus on aggression in training sessions as well. Just not so much like clattering into everyone, and because we don't need that. We know what Romero likes in a training session, so we're not talking about that. It's more just an aggression, the way you carry out all your tasks, and any area of the pitch, both with the ball and without the ball. It's kind of feeding into the brave nature that we had under Postecoglou. He spoke a little bit of that in his press conference about, to dare is to do. That is quite right. There needs to be a bravery in what you do, and he said sometimes the biggest risk is not taking a risk. And look, the focus on defending is not surprising, really, because let's be honest, and I should really point out before this kind of gets aggregated to death as only working on defending. It's not to say they're not working on attacking movement and stuff like that as well, and finishing and things like that. But it is obvious they're going to be able to, or they're going to want to work more on defending in the main, because... Look, Spurs scored goals galore under Ange Postecoglou, didn't they? And that's even while losing Harry Kane at the start of his tenure. But they invariably failed to keep the ball out of the net at the other end of the pitch, more often than not. So I think Thomas Frank is trying to build this solid foundation to underpin those attacking instincts that are naturally there within the squad. He stated actually in his press conference, he said the words, he's 100% sure that we will score a lot of goals. I think he knows the team has that in them. It's about building the foundation behind that and letting those kind of attacking players do what they do without kind of fear of what's happening behind them. So kind of digging around, asking around, the players seem to have found both Frank and his staff, and that's coaching staff, strength and conditioning coaches as well that have come in, to all be very approachable, talkative people. And again, that's all part of this kind of collaborative approach that he takes and looks to build within his structure. That side of things seems to be going well. Of course, in his own words, it's the honeymoon period. They haven't really got to competitive matches yet. So that's kind of when things really get questioned and challenged and things like that. But certainly right now, everyone seems happy enough with how things are going and what's happening, as it should be. And I think it was quite kind of important, really, in a way, as important as friendlies can be, that life began under him with a clean sheet, with 2 goals originating from phases around set pieces, one directly, one kind of from just after it. That's a very kind of important thing after the work they will have been doing in recent weeks. And the game itself, it wasn't a thriller. Friendlies rarely are. First half was a bit like, oh, great, football's back, yay, kind of thing. Second half, I kind of said that to some of the people in the press box, is that I feel like when you look at the 2 11s that are going to be played in either half, the second half 11 had a bit more dynamism about it, a few more players that can produce an exciting through ball, stuff like that. And I think, let's be honest, Mohamed Kudus was the big thing for me in that second half. And he helped Spurs burst to life, especially early on. First, obviously, we had his out-swinging corner, headed on by Luka Vuskovic, onto Will Lancashire to nod home the first goal of the Thomas Frank era. Who had on their, predictions that Will Lancashire would score the first goal of the Thomas Frank era? As one for trivia in the future. Not the first competitive goal, of course, but Will Lancashire doing what he did last summer, really, carrying on with another good pre-season so far. Set-piece goal, straight off the bat, the first goal of the Thomas Frank era, a set-piece goal. Andreas Georgsson, the coach whose most of his role will be involved with set-pieces and restarts, you could see him in the dugout applauding it, obviously very happy that he's already made his impact as well from the first game. Second goal came from the aftermath of a corner, because that's an important thing for Thomas Frank as well. He's very big on the next phases after a set piece as well, being prepared for what comes next, whether that's the second ball or the third ball, and getting that ball straight back into the attacking areas again. And that's exactly what happened, because Kudus, another outswing corner, headed out, I think to Jamie Donnelly, if I remember correctly. He curls the ball back into the box. Again, it gets headed away. But Jed Spence, again, using aggression and stepping up, heads the ball on, goes really nicely into Kudus's run down the left. He pulls the ball inside, sees Vuskovic calling and running into the box, puts the ball into Vuskovic's stride, and he hits this lovely, sweet shot, the young Croatian, straight into the bottom right-hand corner of the net. Lovely goal. And it was probably that combination between two players who were probably the shining lights on the day. I think Will Lancashire, of course, as well, for scoring his first goal, and some other not too bad performances that we'll talk about, but mainly, look, it's about those two players. And again, I always want to stress in these things, you'll hear me say this every pre-season, first off, you have to take into account it's a friendly and there's different aspects to that and different kind of ways to judge games, but also it is a game against a League One team. So we can't go overboard saying that these are the most incredible world beaters ever. They're ready to absolutely destroy and rip apart PSG, pull them apart in the UEFA Super Cup in Udine. They're not there yet. They're a million miles from that at the moment. There's going to be a lot of work to be done in the weeks ahead for that. But you can look at those who took their opportunities. That is the main thing. And of course, the first one is Mohamed Kudus. He took the chance to dazzle and then some. He was very impressive. There's certainly a couple of the national journalists that were raving and waxing lyrical about him. He was good. Like I said, I want to see him against tougher opposition. I want to see him when he's having to defend and go in the other direction as well. But he is certainly a box of tricks, flicks and pace. I think I was surprised at how quick he was. I knew he had this ability to drive forward with the ball, that low centre of gravity, that real strength on the ball, a little bit of a Moussa Dembele edge to the way he carries the ball, and then in terms of being strong enough to keep it with him. But I was surprised at the pace. I didn't know he had that, and that was, I knew he had a little bit of acceleration, but actually he's way faster than I thought he was, which is going to be massive. Again, that's another potent kind of weapon for Spurs, also on the counter as well. And I think there was one run in particular for me that showcased that you might have seen it by now. I think a lot of people have clipped it up and put it on social media. I think it's Jed Spence comes out with the ball, beats a man, runs towards Kudus. Kudus takes the ball off him, heads back kind of into the Spurs half as if he's heading towards his own box, like halfway. Stops in front of these two Reading players who just look at him and go, right, get him. And he just spins around, comes back the other way, beats a man. Then kind of Spence gets a touch on the ball. The ball goes down the touchline. I've watched a replay where I think it actually crosses the line. I did think it did when I was looking down at it from above because it had quite a good position. I think it just crosses it eventually. But linesman doesn't see it, knocks the ball down the line, and he really uses his pace to get past the man and race down the line. Looks up. I think if he'd played it instantly, there was a curling ball on to Sonny at the back of the area, but there was a covering Reading defender who, I can't remember who it was, it absolutely flew back and actually made that ball far more difficult if he any time after the initial moment he'd done it. So Kudus races on, looks up, sees Jamie Donnelly coming into the edge of the area, plays it to him. Jamie Donnelly does quite well to kind of dig it out from under his feet as a player tracks alongside him, gets forward a little bit, has a shot and it's deflected wide. But it just was a moment that summed up what Kudus is going to bring to this team. And look, Spurs need more attacking options. They do. And he brings something very different, the Ghana midfielder, to this team. And I think he'll complement Brennan Johnson in being a completely different option on the right. Johnson, he looked rusty in the game. He didn't look particularly good. Spurs kept trying when he was on the pitch, these diagonal long balls over the top. And this is, again, another aspect that we'll see under Thomas Frank. Completely opposing different ways of trying to score goals. There will be direct play. There will be short, intricate passes. There will be long throws, we know. We didn't get to see a long throw. We didn't see who won the long throw audition. But yeah, there's going to be every different kind of way of trying to get a goal is what he's going to do. And they kept trying this diagonal ball over the top, whoever was in that position to hit the ball. And it didn't quite work for him. He wasn't quite on it, Brennan Johnson. But what I think we're going to see, the difference between the two is Brennan Johnson's game really is about arriving in the box, making these really well-timed runs. And look, that's why he was the team's top scorer last season. And people mustn't forget that Thomas Frank wanted Brennan Johnson at Brentford. He tried to sign him and he thought he had a deal done for him just before he went to Spurs in 2023. So he will have planned how Brennan Johnson works within his system. This isn't someone that he's got and doesn't want. He is a player that he wants. And I do wonder whether we'll see him not only on the right, but we'll see him sometimes playing off of the striker as well. Whereas Kudus is a completely different player. He's all about the build-up, the dynamism on the ball. Look, we know Brennan Johnson needs to attack his man more. He's got that pace. He's got the touch to take it past his kind of opponent more often. And I'm hoping that he'll kind of be inspired to do more of that from the way Kudus plays, and Kudus will be more inspired to make those good runs into the box and score more goals, because, you know, that's the element to his game that he needs to improve. He had a decent first season at West Ham. Second season, not so much. I think it was just 4 goals last season. And albeit wasn't in his favoured position, he was up front a lot, but all the players can learn something from each other. And I just think having these kind of 2 very different players as your potential right wing options, it's a nice mix. It's essentially, I guess, just giving Thomas Frank a toolbox that's got a lot of tools in it, and you can use different ones to solve different issues and unlock things, and all over the place with this metaphor. Different keys to unlock different doors would have maybe been a better way of doing it than a toolbox. And he said after the game, I thought there were a lot of positives in there. If we start with Kudus, of course, he's the newest one. He was exciting to watch. He had 4 or 5 very good actions where you could see what he's about. His pace, one-on-one skills, the way he can twist and turn going forward. That was a positive. There were a lot of others where I get to know them better. I've watched them a lot over the years before I got appointed. But this, when you see them here and now, and when I watch the game back, are all the details we can go through. And of course, like I said, Kudus and Vuskovic, the other big positive on the day, he's waited 2 years for this opportunity to pull on a Spurs shirt and play a game of football. And what a Spurs shirt it is. I really like that black away one. It is right up there for me. I'm a big fan of it. I might have already asked for it for my birthday because I think that will look very nice playing a bit of 5-a-side in. I think Vuskovic started a little bit nervously in that second half. He came on with the second half crew. A little bit nervous to start, but he kind of grew into the game as he kind of settled. Had obviously quite a young centre-back partner himself in Mickey van der Ven. But I think the headed assist really helped him. He used a lot of power and strength to get that the header across to Lancashire. He was being held. If you watch it back, he's been kind of pulled attempted to be pulled all over the place. But he's so big and strong at 18 already. He does really well to kind of knock that on. And his own goal was just further proof what a ridiculous attacking machine he is for a centre back. That's 7 goals and 3 assists last season for Westerlo. He is not your normal giant young centre-back. He, like I said, 10 goal involvements. I think it was in 36 matches for Westerlo. That's a decent tally for a midfielder. For a centre-back, it's remarkable. And I think with his technical ability and desire to look forward, I know we're always talking about playing as centre-back, as a number 6, play him as a defensive midfielder. I do wonder whether genuinely we might see Vuskovic at some point in his career as a midfielder, because he's got that ability to operate far further up the pitch. But he's going to be a potent weapon with his technique and ability around the box in set pieces, but also, as I said earlier, those phases of play after the set piece if he's still in and around the box. Obviously, he's going to have to work. He's only 18. He's going to have to work on a lot of different things. His defensive game, of course. He made one good defensive block in front of Vicario. I couldn't tell whether Vicario was going to get it anyway. And he kind of turned to him afterwards as if to say sorry, like as if he was. But, it was a good first exposure to the rough and tumble of English football, I think, is the best way to put it. Look, with the sheer number of defenders at Spurs, and obviously the older and more experienced, slightly more experienced Kota Takai coming in as well. 20 years, wasn't he, to Vuskovic 18, plus those annoying European squad restrictions. Vuskovic's future may still lie away from the club on loan. I've said before, there's a queue of clubs across Europe waiting to try and get their hands on him for a season if Thomas Frank makes that decision. And I think, look, if he continues in this vein of playing matches, not only is Thomas Frank going to really think, I don't know if I really want to get him away from this squad. I think as Spurs fans, they're going to be very vocal about not wanting him to head off on loan. It may end up still being the best decision for him to play regular football week in, week out and continue to develop. But also, let's see what he does in the remainder of these games, especially when he comes up against the likes of Arsenal and Newcastle and Bayern. And if he's still there, if he is remaining at the club, for the PSG game and things like that, whether he plays a part in that too. So it's all new exposures and lessons for him with Thomas Frank, the teacher, of course, in the classroom. Thomas Frank himself said, Luka deserves the praise as well. A great header, showed his physicality and his composure on the ball. He's not getting stressed when opponents get close, and what a strike. I noticed that. His composure on the ball, it started off, like I said, a little bit nervy, but as the game wore on, I think he got and adjusted to the pace of it, and he didn't seem phased when kind of Reading players came towards him. At speed. Kevin Danso spoke about him after the game as well. He said he's amazing, young, lots of confidence, and you can just see his presence on the pitch. And I think it's a good thing today that he got his goal and assist. Vuskovic's own interview was good, especially for an 18-year-old in a foreign country, having just made his debut. He was quite humble, quite kind of quick to deflect the attention to others. It was put to him, you've just made your debut, you've got a clean sheet, an assist and a goal. And he said, I'm very happy for those stats and I'm more happy that we won the game with a clean sheet. We just have to continue to build on this. Kudus gave me a top pass and I just put it in the net. I had a bit of good luck and I'm very happy about it. And when speaking about his time at the club so far, he said, everything is perfect. The club is behind me. The players, the staff, the coach, everyone is helping me a lot. I'm very happy now and that's it. I think it was a good game, a lot of duels, a lot of transitions. I think we managed it well. We got a clean sheet and a victory, so it's good. I had Vicario and Van der Ven beside me. It was a really amazing experience and I hope it will continue. So a positive first experience for him. And from the others, really, kind of like I said, it was a bit of a mixed bag. Mainly, it's as any pre-season game is. It's about getting fitter. It's about getting sharper. Pedro Porro came back earlier in pre-season than he probably should have done, and I think that showed. I think he and probably Rodrigo Bentancur for me were probably the two best players in that first half starting 11. Porro, he headed one Reading chance off the Spurs line. He took a horrible lunge to his leg from Marco Mahoney. I think that would have been a red card in a game. It was really cynical. He knew the man had got past him, but Porro got past him. And it was far too high and late. And it was lucky that it wasn't a bad injury, to be honest. He got a booking, which for a friendly is essentially like, whoa, that was too much. So I think if that had been kind of looked at and reviewed in a Premier League game, if it were obviously League One, but if it in a game with VAR, I think he probably would have been off the pitch. Who else? Romero and Udogie didn't really do much wrong. Romero looked pretty good on the ball, took as many opportunities as normal to push on a little bit, which sometimes left like a back three of Porro, Danso and Udogie. But Udogie has that trademark energy, doesn't he? Got up and down the pitch. Porro put some good balls into the box as well. I think one Romero headed into the side netting. Danso was all right. Nothing spectacular. Like I said, the first half was a bit like, It was very much a run out rather than a game, it felt like. There were two youngsters in the team. Alfie Devine, it was solid for most parts, without being spectacular maybe. Nice and tidy in what he did on the whole. Mikey Moore started a bit slowly, gave the ball away a few times early on, but he had some kind of quite exciting moments as the first half wore on. He went on this one little lovely dribble past a couple of players before having a shot blocked in the box. And look, the most important thing is they didn't really look out of place, and that's all you can ask for these young players at the moment. Second half, in terms of youngsters, obviously Will Lancashire got his goal. I think he's kind of feels like another summer already where he's edged ahead of Dane Scarlett, who didn't even travel with the squad. I think he's fit. I certainly know he was training on Friday. I certainly know that. So unless something happened after that, we didn't have a press conference after the game, you see. So I don't think we're getting one at Luton either. I think the next time we'll speak to Thomas Frank is out on the tour. So we're kind of having to dig around and get bits of information ourselves rather than getting direct answers from Thomas Frank, other than when he Does his Spurs play interviews as well, his club interviews. So Lancashire, yeah, it was good. Didn't see too much of the ball after that, but hey, as a striker, it's about taking your moments, and he did. It was a good kind of improvised header, reacted really well. I thought Jamie Donnelly's second half was good. He had good passing range, quite a solid display. Like I said, had that chance that was deflected wide. Yeah, a decent kind of start to his summer. I'd say while Johnson and probably Dominic Solanke were maybe the rustiest players for me in the first half, I'd say second half, that unwanted honour probably goes to Sonny and Lucas Berreval, I think. Berreval played some quite sloppy passes during the second half at times and kind of invited a bit of pressure on Spurs. Just maybe like under-hit passes, things like that. Had some good moments, but just for me, look, this is his first game since he had that training ground ankle injury, didn't he? Towards the end of last season. So he's going to kind of be looking for his sharpness and his rhythm again. And I think that was the issue with Sonny today. He just couldn't really find his rhythm in the game. He lost the ball a couple of times. Although it's worth noting that it was his blocked cross and being tackled while making a run down the touchline that led to both of the corners that Spurs scored from, or just after. So he kind of did have an indirect impact on both goals. But yeah, just wasn't on it. You could see he looked rusty. You could see he needs a lot of fine-tuning and sharpness. Sliced an effort over from the edge of the box, which was a difficult chance to kind of take. But, you know, you'd expect him to do a little bit better than he did with the quality he's got. And that brought fair old jeers from the Reading crowd. He looked very frustrated when neither Kudus or Donnelly got the ball out to him during that chance I mentioned in the second half. And look, his future does remain unclear, and definitely I would say the mood among the journalists, including myself, after Thomas Frank's first press conference at Hotspur on Friday, didn't really get any better when it came to Sonny's future. I didn't think the answers did anything to kind of clear the fog that's around the captain. I felt more with Romero, there was a little bit more of a positive nature to it. With Romero, he described him as very, very important for us. And he said that, you know, I know he's looking forward to... So I said used the wrong tone there. He said, I know that he's looking forward to the season, suggesting maybe there's a conversation that's been had there with Romero. And I asked specifically that to Thomas Frank. That was one of my questions. I just remembered now. I said, look, have you had a conversation with Romero and Son yet about their futures? And he kind of like, and just swerved around it and gave a slightly different answer. He said, my expectation is all the players are here and they're training well. That is what I'm focusing on. And again, very impressed by them. They set the standards, as in those two, and train hard. And as I said, they're playing tomorrow. That's a good indicator that they're here. But he never really gave much away about Son. Like I said, with Romero, there just kind of were these little lines that he said that just felt a little bit more positive towards him maybe being there for next season. But with Sonny, I don't know. I just don't know. I didn't get that vibe as much. Obviously, you know, we know the situation with Sonny. I reported early last month that he is open to leaving the club this summer, certainly more so than he has in the past. MLS potentially, Saudi Pro League as well, interested in him. I kind of felt like the most telling answer from Thomas Frank on the whole Son situation about, you know, just turned 33 now, isn't he, Sonny? A week or two back, that he was asked, have you decided on your captain for next season? And he said, good question. I haven't decided anything on that. I have a long list of bullet points I need to get through and I take them in the right order. He was the captain last year, and when we play 245s tomorrow, Son and Romero will be the two captains, but I haven't made a final decision. He was also followed up on that and asked, would it be his decision or the player's decision? He was very clear, it will be my decision. And look, if Sonny was definitely remaining at Tottenham for this season, surely there wouldn't be a decision to make. You're not going to strip the captaincy off a player who has been there for a decade, who's just won and lifted the trophy that the club has been kind of craved for so long. And he's obviously given everything to Spurs over the years. That would be a very, very brutal decision to strip the captaincy off him. So the fact that he's suggesting he doesn't know who the captain's going to be more surely suggests that the future remains unclear for him. at the Spurs. And also there was another actually interesting answer about, he was asked whether kind of after 10 years at the club, should it really be down to Sonny to decide what comes next for him, with 11 months or so left of his contract. And he said, it's always tricky situations like that. If that happens, right now I have a player that is fully committed and training well and will play tomorrow. If a player has been at a club a long time, then there will always be a decision for the club to take, of course. And of course, the head coach and the guys who are in charge, and in this case will be with Daniel and Johan, because there is something in it. If someone wants to leave at a certain stage, then there can be something there. But the club will always decide in the end, of course. I just kind of felt the whole language around it. It almost felt like he was being very careful not to really say anything, but then was kind of not saying anything particularly positive either. Yeah. I don't know. Let me know what you think from those quotes and any other quotes that you've seen from the press conference. I just felt it was a man that's kind of almost still waiting to see what happens with Sonny, or perhaps knows what's going to happen with Sonny. I don't know. We will find out, won't we, in the weeks ahead. The rest of the game, what else can I say? Oh, there was some weird disturbances in the crowd at a friendly. It was really odd. It was kind of right diagonally. We could see it quite well from the press box. Up at the top of the stand, two of the stands were meeting, and there was Spurs fans and Reading fans had a row of stewards between them. We could see it was all kind of kicking off, and there was objects being thrown as well. Some of that seemed to be hitting the stewards in the middle as well. It was not a great thing to see in any sense, especially for a friendly. And it shouldn't be really seen in any aspect, but it's just really weird kicking off during a friendly. And it'll be interesting to see whether there's more to come from that or not. There's a suggestion of perhaps some police involvement as well. So we'll find out about that in the days ahead and whether anything comes from that. But it was just mad. It's like, what is that all about? I mean, who goes on a Saturday afternoon to Reading and starts, that sort of stuff going? Very strange indeed. However, that started. What else we had? Oh, final whistle. And the final whistle blew. Vicario went over to Jed Spence and actually Vicario made a couple of really good saves in the game. One tipped over and one late save from, I'm trying to remember if it was a header. I think it was a low-driven shot. It was like almost the final action of the game. But yeah, at the end of the game, he went over to Jed Spence and grabbed him right kind of round the neck, pulled his kind of head-to-head, and he was having one of his trademark, very passionate, emotional, like almost like a debrief of, I don't know whether it was of Jed Spence's performance or not. Jed was all right, played okay on the whole. Couple of moments where he turned into trouble, but on the whole he did well. Got up the pitch for a chance later on. I think it was Basuma played quite a decent ball into his path. Basuma was a bit Basuma-ish, some really nice moments and some sloppy moments as well. But yeah, so Vicario grabbed Spencer as having this very passionate kind of sermon, whatever it is he's doing. There was even this moment when Lancashire came over to kind of give like a kind of a high-fivey type thing, the old clap of the hands to Jed Spence, who kind of turns mid being kind of spoken to very passionately head-to-head with Vicario, and kind of goes like that to Lancashire as Vicario still going, it'd be interesting if we manage to get Jed on tour, which I think will be a great interview if we do. He's not like the kind of most... having interviewed him a few years back, he might be different now. Obviously, he's much older, but he's not normally a guy that is desperate to do interviews. But certainly, a lot of the Spurs ones I've seen him do recently have been far better than kind of the one we had to stitch together after he first joined. But I would really like to talk to him on this tour because there's quite a few little moments that would be interesting to know about. And obviously, the whole turnaround in the Spurs career too. What else do we have? Oh, Thomas Frank did his team talk on the pitch. At the end of the game. He'd also done it to the second half team at half time before they came on. I do wonder whether that's purely because of the number of players. I mean, it was so huge. They took 2 11s and another 3 players as well. So I do wonder whether, I don't know how big the League One style dressing rooms are at Reading. Obviously, not always a League One team by any stretch of imagination, but I do wonder whether there's actually enough space in there, or whether he decided, look, we'll let the other guys get changed after the first half. We'll come out here on the side of the pitch and we'll have a chat. And then at the end of the game, he did a bigger one with everyone around as well. And he kind of, having heard some of the kind of stuff that was being said, I think he was mainly talking about the good aspects of the game and what worked and what they'll improve on as well. And I guess it's all about understanding his demands now as well. And I think a few of the Spurs players went off to Wembley to watch the boxing. I certainly saw, I think Maddison and Van der Ven were there. I think Alfie Devine's Instagram showed that he was there as well. Who else? Oh, I mentioned the 3 players as well that didn't get on the pitch. George Abbott, Ashley Phillips, Heung-min. And actually, I only noticed this when I was writing up my talking points late in the evening. The team sheet has been very deliberately done in that it's the first 11 that started a game, and actually underneath it is the second 11 that came on at the second half, and then those 3 players are right at the bottom, as in case of emergencies, break glass type thing. I've never seen that. A team sheet actually shows the 2 halves, 2 teams you're going to see in the game. Look, for George Abbott, the plan, I've said this before, is always going to be that he's going to be loaned out again. Brilliant development in the last 12 months or so. Headed off to Notts County, had a great season there. And yes, the expectation is that he will now go off on his second loan and will come back all the better for it. And I think with Ashley Phillips and Heung-min, the future also looks to be, or the immediate future anyway, looks to be away from Tottenham. We've had a few departures this week. Alfie Dorrington's gone back to Aberdeen on loan, which I think is a really good move for him because did really well there, became a Scottish Cup winner. I think they've got European football because of that as well this season too. So that's a good full season loan as well at a club where he was feeling at home. A great move for him. And then next summer you make a decision on what comes next for Alfie Dorrington, whether he truly feels that he's going to break into the setup with so many defenders there, or whether his professional career continues elsewhere. I'm really kind of pleased for him of how well he did at Aberdeen, and now he's got this kind of second bite of the cherry, as it were. We've seen Josh Keeley has gone permanently. I kind of reported that earlier this week. That, just contract talks just couldn't really get anywhere. It's a difficult situation with him because from the club's eyes, he's non-homegrown. He's essentially 4th choice. So they're probably not going to offer the kind of wages that he could probably get as a first-team starter at other levels of the game. And lo and behold, that looks to be the case. He's now gone to Luton Town. As I reported earlier in the week, £1 million deal, sell-on clause they've got, no buyback clause, but a sell-on clause as well. I know a lot of people kind of get a bit stuck on buyback clauses, but buyback clauses are quite rare because also they don't really mean much if the player doesn't want to come back. You can say, we want you back, but if the player goes, no, then it doesn't matter. It's almost like a first refusal more than anything, You have the chance to bring them back, but if they don't want to come back, you're not going to take them back as a prisoner and shove them in a cupboard somewhere. So I think a sell-on clause is the most important thing for Spurs because, like I've said before, there's a belief that he will become a Premier League goalkeeper, but they just know that he's just not going to break through at Spurs at the moment because there's just, Kinski's come in, he played the first half today, was all right. You can you forget how kind of comfortable he is with his feet because he hasn't played for a little while. Kinski's come in. He's a non-homegrown, of course, as well. Brandon Austin is homegrown. And it's the weird situation where Josh Keeley is more experienced than Brandon Austin. He's played more games of senior football. He has been called up to the Republic of Ireland squad as well. But he is below him in the pecking order because of this strange situation with the homegrown stuff. It's just such a shame that they kind of couldn't have him as a homegrown player. He just didn't kind of really come in early enough for that. But yeah, look, I'm sure he'll go on and do very well in League One with Luton. I think there's some people like, he should have surely gone to a Championship squad team after doing so well at Orient in League One. But I think Luton are probably going to be a team that you would think will bounce back up. And I'm sure we'll see him kind of heading back up the levels, Josh Keeley. So, yeah, hopefully he does really well there. What else? Thomas Frank explained about the other absences in the squad. Obviously, Archie Gray, Matisse Tell, Wilson Odobert, they've only just come back to pre-season really in the last couple of days because of, again, as I said before, they're at the Under-21 European Championships. But he also explained some others. He said Manor Solomon, a minor calf injury, unfortunately, nothing big. Kota Takai has a minor injury, a contact one. We expect him to train next week. Richie has trained well. We're just building him. I think that's the big thing. We're building him. He trained well yesterday. I'm expecting a full training week, and I'm expecting him right now to play next week. Timing, obviously, Solomon's injury is far from ideal. It's classic Spurs, isn't it? That he's had such a torrid time with injuries at Tottenham, went to Leeds, had a near kind of ever-present season, other than a little kind of couple of games he missed for them. Had a great season as well. And I think this really prevents him from impressing Thomas Frank. It prevents him from getting a move away in this early part of the window as well. In terms of Richarlison, look, Richarlison's going to want to impress Thomas Frank. I think Richarlison will want to stay at Tottenham. He'll want to catch his eye. It's a season ahead of a World Cup. He'll want to play football. Spurs, of course, will consider any large bid for a player that has had such poor availability over the season since he joined from Everton. But also, I think the Spurs are very aware that when he is available, when he plays, he makes an impact. If they can get him out on the pitch, they're going to have a really decent kind of alternative to Solanke, and also someone that can play with alongside Solanke as well. And this is the thing about the squad now, is that I know we want more players to come in, and we certainly want a certain Nottingham Forest player to come in through the door, but he's got to trim the squad. It is bloated. We were working it out today. Plus, people like, even like Brian Hill. We've forgotten about Brian. Brian Hill is in Spain rehabbing kind of after his knee surgery, and he's kind of trying to get back to fitness. And you've also got like Maddison, who's part training with the squad now. He's almost able to kind of take part in stuff. Dejan Kulusevski, after his patella surgery, he's not going to be back. I asked, that was one of my questions as well. I asked him about those three players, and he said that Kulusevski is not going to be back in time for the first game of the season. Obviously, it's a kind of serious thing that he had surgery for, so it's going to take longer for that. Dragusin, obviously, a cruciate ligament. He'll be coming back from that as well. He kind of said he and Kulusevski are further back, obviously, than Maddison, who's back involved in a way with the team, and hopefully, as pre-season goes on, we'll be able to kind of get back involved again. But yeah, you include those, and you include Brian Hill as well, and you know, and Takai and Solomon and Richarlison. I think we worked out the squad is pushing towards 40 players. It's in the 30s. I can't remember what it is. It needs to be trimmed and chopped. It is bloated as Mr. Creosote, as people pointed out to me before. But at the same time, he knows he needs quality as well. He was asked about kind of the squad and needing to add to it, and he said, look, no doubt, if you want to compete in all competitions, you need a competitive squad, a robust squad. There's a lot of competitive players in the squad. It's an exciting squad. There's no doubt the club is in the market and looking. I would like to speak when a player comes in and not about the market. It's always a balance, the squad size. How big, how small should it be to compete? I know Tottenham, I know the players, I've seen a lot, but I need to know them more one-to-one. I need to train them and getting input every single day about them to give me more knowledge. But if you want to compete, you need to use the squad well. So yeah, that is the key thing as well. He does have to make a lot of decisions on players in the squad. It's all very well us wanting, I want that one kind of thing, I want that player to come in. But if Thomas Frank then finds actually that area of the squad, I've probably got people that work in my system quite well. It's just going to create this mass, and of course with club trained players and issues, all of that. One player it looks like he seemed to discount. Sorry, one position it looked like he seemed to discount was another forward. He said, I think the front three or four, depending on if we play with a 10 and a front three, with Dominic up there, I think Richarlison is a good striker. I know he's been struggling with injuries. I think he was having a strong end to the season and was very important for the team to win the Europa League. But you've got Brennan, Kulusevski. I know he's out for a little bit of a while, but he's still there. Maddison, Odebear, Matisse Tell, and now Kudus. I think that's a strong creative front line, and I'm 100% sure we'll score a lot of goals. I don't know whether when that was just transcribed anyone missed it or not, but I don't think he mentioned Son in that. I might have to go and listen back on whether I didn't transcribe that when we were kind of working out all the stuff in the press conference. But I'm trying to remember if he actually did mention Son or not, or whether he left him out of that list. So what else we had? With Spurs been linked with João Paulina from Bayern Munich for the number 6 role. You might remember him from Fulham. I kind of feel like the reports have been upwards up to like £26 million, which seems a bit steep for me for a 30-year-old who only started 9 matches for Bayern last season. There was a torn muscle that he had, which kept him out for about 3 months, but also just kind of never really got back in favour. He has got that Premier League experience, like I said, having played for Fulham. But I just kind of feel like if they're going to move for a player like that, it's surely not going to be for £26 million for someone in their 30s that had struggles last season, not only with injury, but kind of availability, getting in the team as well. It just feels like a big number for someone like that. And of course, there is Morgan Gibbs-White. He was asked, Thomas Frank, about him yesterday. Sorry, not yesterday now, is it? Friday. And he said the classic, I won't talk about players that are not part of this club. He said the only 2 players I would speak about is Messi and Ronaldo, but they're a bit old now, or something like that. Look, the Morgan Gibbs-White standoff continues at the moment of recording this in the very early hours of Sunday morning. He did play for Forest in their friendly against Monaco at home yesterday. 0-0 friendly at home, played the first half, and as he came off the pitch at half-time, he applauded the Forest fans and made a heart symbol towards them as they sang his name, or chanted his name. His teammate Ola Aina, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, told Sky Sports, Morgan is a professional. I don't really know the ins and outs of that, but he was here today. He was playing, training with us, staying fit as normal. At the end of the day, we're all professionals. We've got a job to do, and that's what Morgan's doing right now, keeping it professional. So if you haven't seen, Forest are travelling on Monday to Portugal for warm weather camp. It's quite warm here at the moment, but they're kind of pre-season camp. And I guess unless something dramatically shifts within the next 24 hours or so, he's probably going to be heading off with the club on that. And look, he wouldn't be the first player to kind of head off on a pre-season somewhere with another club before Spurs sign them. Of course, Spurs want him in as soon as possible to get involved with Spurs pre-season, but it's not unheard of. I mean, Solanke last season, 2023. No, it was last summer. What am I talking about? It was last summer. He did the same with Bournemouth. He went off on their European. I'm trying to think where they went now. Where did they go? I can't remember, but they went somewhere, and he went with them, and then signed for Spurs afterwards. So in a way, you want, if a player's going to get a pre-season elsewhere, at least they're going to come back in kind of the state you want them to. It's not as ideal, of course, of having them in your own pre-season squad, but there are certain circumstances right now because, look, a resolution needs to be found because Spurs still want the move to happen. Morgan Gibbs-White wants the move to happen. And I think all parties are just waiting to see kind of who blinks first over this deal and much discussed yet confidential transfer release clause that is obviously now shrouded in all these legal matters. But you would hope that this week we'll get some clarification on that because it can't just be allowed to sit there in limbo because it doesn't do anyone any good or any favours. It might be what Forest want, but it needs to go somewhere. It does. And yeah, like I said, now is all about Thomas Frank making decisions about this squad, watching them in these friendlies, watching them in training, deciding who can go, where he wants improvements made in the squad. Because the games are now, here we are, they're going to keep coming. I love it. I'm so happy to be back with match action. Even friendlies are a bit kind of all over the place. I got in this job to write and talk about football, not talk about everything else that goes around it, although there's obviously some interesting aspects to that. But I just love football. That's what I want to look at and analyse and enjoy. And there's no time to waste for Thomas Frank. He's got his first competitive match is against the champions of Europe to try and win the Super Cup. And then the Premier League season creeps straight up 3 days or so later. There is no rest for Thomas Frank. He is leaping straight into this. So, look, of course, I am very wary that I'm recording this late at night and this could go out and on Sunday something could come out, something could change. Morgan Gibbs-White, anything, any other kind of players they're going for. I've seen them linked with very expensive centre-backs and things like that. As I said before, there are a lot of centre-backs I think you would have to see if something happened with someone like Romero. Still just don't know where Romero would go if that was the case. Before a big expensive centre back comes in through the door. But certainly there's area of the pitch where they'll need players. I'm still not entirely sold on left back and whether there needs to be another one there. I know Jed Spence can play there. Ben Davies played there today, which is a bit weird seeing him back as a left back. He started also, I'd say, a little bit sluggishly, but kind of got into the game more in the second half. But yeah, I kind of feel like left back maybe for me is an area, unless they're going to commit. Well, they're saying that he was on the right today. I was going to say unless Jed is kind of committed to being a left back, but yeah, I don't know. As always, let me know in the comments what you think of the position Spurs need. And for me, obviously Morgan Gibbs-White ticks massive box in that number 10 role. I think a number 6 is needed, and I would say a left back. And then for me, it's about replacing other areas in the squad and strengthening areas of the squad to battle on all fronts. There's another little thing for the press conference. He did speak a lot about building a squad to compete on all fronts and how important that was. He also said he agreed with Daniel Levy about the fact that a club of Spurs side should be kind of have the ambition of winning the Premier League and the Champions League, although he did also counter that by saying, I don't know when exactly that will be. I think he made a point at some point that when he was talking about those betting odds for winning the league, he said, look, there are probably 6-7 clubs that are above us in the betting. So I think he's trying to manage expectations while also not disagreeing with those expectations. It's kind of in this bit of a bind, isn't he? Let's be honest, Thomas Frank, in that the chairman kind of, with the decision made to remove Ange Postecoglou and then the statement he made in the interview not long after, he has kind of set these high expectations. But also on the flip side, there is this kind of a need to build another project. And can you have a lack of patience? It's just, it's Tottenham. It's Tottenham. Lads, it's Tottenham. That was one thing I loved. Lads, it's Tottenham now makes me think of Bilbao, which is great. Bilbao. But I love the fact that this game started with the Tottenham fans. I think it was more than 3,000 made the trip singing, we know what we are, we know what we are, champions of Europe, we know what we are. Which some of the national journalists, I could tell, that was really annoying. It was like, well, they're not champions of Europe. So, well, they're one of the champions of Europe. But I just love that they can sing that now. It's fantastic. And yeah, they all are. So Kevin Danso in his interview was asked about his kind of winner's medal, and he said like he keeps it just under his TV because he wants to, every morning when he gets up and every time he comes back in from training, he wants to see it there, and that's what it's all about. And that is what Tottenham are all about now. They're a winning club again, hurrah! And hopefully they can continue to do that. I can really feel my voice is going out. I was doing a lot of shouting on the pitch yesterday. I was kind of like the elder statesman of the team. I was trying to do a lot of organising, and for anyone that's bothered, I was playing in a bit of a kind of deep-lying striker, number 10 type role. I'd love to be able to say, just like Harry Kane would pull back and spray lovely passes around. I do play some nice passes, but on no planet am I comparing myself to Harry Kane. But we won, and that makes it 3 in a row. So great times were had by all, well, Spurs reporters anyway. Trying to think of anything else. That's kind of it, really. Next video I'll do, of course, will be on any updates in the week, if we get any more in the coming days about transfers and the like. Then we've got Luton next weekend. Again, like I said, I don't think there's any press conference or anything before or after that one, or any kind of player stuff. And then, a couple of days later, we head off. I'll be off to Hong Kong and South Korea, which I'm really looking forward to, and interviews galore and everything. Not entirely sure yet whether I'll be able to do a video while on tour. It's going to be a bit manic. It's a bit of a shorter tour, and it's all going to be very compressed, and I'm going to be constantly here, there, and everywhere. Might be that I have to wait until I come back, but we'll see. We'll see what we can fit in. And yeah, it's a mad 2 weeks. I think I'm in 4 different countries in 2 weeks because of work. Yeah, Hong Kong, South Korea, Germany for the Bayern game, and then Italy, for the Super Cup, before Burnley come to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I can't wait to go back there as well. I miss the place. I really do. Right, I'm going to head off now so I can come in just under the hour. as always, get going in those comments. And also, we've got that little community thing as well. If anyone wants to post in there, that's been good fun. Kind of have a look through there as well. I need to get involved in that again. Start replying to stuff as well. I will do that. Just my brain is full of so many things. Not always good things, and not a lot of information, but just trying to dive through everything. Right, I'm going to head off now. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.